Toda for joining us today, family. We hope all is well with you and yours on this wonderful day that the Most High has made. And of course, we are glad and joyful in it. On today's episode, we want to look at the wives of the patriarchs. When we say the 12 patriarchs of Yasharel, we're talking about the 12 sons of Israel, 12 sons of Jacob. By looking at the wives of the patriarchs, then we can get an idea of who the patriarchs were. But before we delve into that, I want to deal with the question we have been getting. And because it is a valid question, I want to deal with it quickly here today. And the question goes hand in hand with our topic today, the 12 wives of the patriarchs. This question, by the way, is coming from other Hebrews of Yasharel. And the question is this: why are the depictions we use strictly of dark-skinned people? Why are they not some light, fair, or brown-colored Israelites being used or being depicted? First of all, I would say that those who are asking these questions are definitely not watching our channel on a weekly basis. In fact, we have depicted Yasharel as all skin tones in the spectrum of what would be called black, or some may call it a dark brown. Everything from dark-skinned all the way to very light-skinned or fair-skinned Israelites. But because this goes right along with our topic today, we know that the makeup of the people of Yasharel have a variety of skin tones, that being from the darkest to the lightest. For example, if we look at people described as mulatto, we definitely find Yasharel within that people group. We have discussed the fact that we find Israelites in South America and in Mexico, in the islands such as the Dominican Republic, and our brothers and sisters in Cuba, for example. And then if you go east, we find us in the Philippines and some of the Pacific Islands. You'll find Yasharel in India and in regions called the Middle East, such as Iran and Iraq. And we know what the word tells us about Yasharel being scattered to the four corners of the earth. We know that this, in fact, happened. It actually occurred. We have been thus far tracking Yasharel mainly in Africa, the continent known as Africa, and places like Spain and Portugal. In various records that we find, they were described as dark-skinned people. Of course, these records were written by Europeans, and we have used many of these references in our earlier episodes. But make no doubt about it, we are tracking Yasharel from where they came out of. And where they came out of is the continent known today as Africa. When we track them, we can track them north, south, east, and west. But we start from there. We find Yasharel settling up and down the Mediterranean, for example. In the northern countries of Africa, we also find that. In this channel, we not only study what Yah says about his people, Yasharel, but we also track the tribes, and we have been doing that. We will, Yah willing, will be covering those other areas we mentioned earlier. One of the tricks of Hasatan is to have the people focus on skin color, whereas in the word of the Most High, we find him focusing on the people group or a tribe. And so that's what we do. We focus on the people group and the tribes. And that, sir, is a fact. But it's interesting because no one ever noticed what color the biblical characters were until they started being depicted as dark-skinned people. You know, the truth is not always lovely and fuzzy. The truth can hurt some people. When I was growing up, I was taught that the reason for the many variations of skin tones within my community, that being the so-called African American community, was because we had European within our DNA due to the transatlantic slave trade and how our women were forced to lie with their slave master. If they were light-skinned, for example, with a pointy nose, then they must have had some type of European mixed within them. They must have some type of Scottish or some type of German, French within them, only to find out that there are Hebrews, Yasharel, of many shades: brown, light-skinned, dark-skinned, pointy nose, a fuller nose, what they like to call flat nose, straight hair, thick hair, hair texture of all colors, found all over Africa. We're talking ancient Hebrews. We're talking about those who never assembled or mixed with Europeans. For example, the Igbos in Nigeria and the Ashanti of Ghana. When I look at those, I see people who look just like so-called African Americans, but just speaking a different language or a different dialect. And really, that's just two of many examples. So as we begin our topic today, the patriarchs' wives, we can find some clues as to why there are so many variations within our people. So we want to start in the book of Genesis chapter 10 verse 1, and it reads, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood." When we look at the different nations in the world, we can start right there in Genesis 10, known as the Table of Nations. The nations that we see now came from these three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. The next place we want to look at is the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, and it seems to have changed a little bit, so this is an earlier version. But when we look at Ham, it says the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Genesis 10, 6 through 20. So there's a couple things there. Number 1, Ham was the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negro. This topic is really talking about the wives of the 12 patriarchs. We know the Negro to be Yasharel. It's always important when you're reading the Bible to put a pause when you see the Hamites and where those groups actually lived geographically, and how the different tribes within the Hamites constantly had interaction with the Israelites. We see this with Abraham and Abimelech, who is the king of the Philistines. The Philistines, a seafaring people, were sons of Mizraim. And of course, Yasharel had plenty of interaction with Mizraim, or the Egyptians. But we want to remember how much interaction happened between Yasharel and Hamites. So we know that the Zondervan Bible Dictionary states that Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. Tells us that the Negroes were also dark. And really that goes without saying, because the word Negro literally means black. And interestingly enough, this word comes out of Spain and Portugal, where we know that our people came out of in the late 1400s. The root coming from Proto-Indo-European, meaning dark. So let's look at the wives of the patriarchs of the 12 tribes, starting off with Reuben being the oldest son, Reuben being the first son of Jacob and also Leah. Jacob had 2 wives, Leah and Rachel, where really his desire was with Rachel. He wanted Rachel to be his wife, but his uncle Laban, father of Leah and Rachel, required that Jacob married Leah, his argument being that the older daughter must marry before the younger daughter. So we know that Jacob served Laban for 14 years for Leah and for Rachel. So Leah has the firstborn, and they named the child Reuben. And Reuben, according to the book of Jasher, his wife was Eliruam. It reads there in the 45th chapter of the book of Jasher, Reuben, the son of Jacob, went to Timnah and took unto him for a wife Eliruam, the daughter of Avi, the Canaanite, and came to her. There is no mention of Reuben's wife in the 66 books of the King James Version, Christian canonized Bible. So we see Reuben marrying a Canaanite. Again, Canaan being the son of Ham makes him a Hamite. The next son of Jacob is Simeon. He's the second son of Jacob, also the son of Leah. And again, we're going to reference from the book of Jasher. Simeon's wife was Bunah, a Canaanite, the same as Bunah, whom Simeon took captive from the city of Shechem. There is no mention of Simeon's wife in the 66 books left in the King James Bible. So we find the first 2 sons both having Canaanite wives. Looking at the third son of Jacob, Levi, son of Leah, according to the book of Jubilees and the testament of the 12 patriarchs, they tell us that Levi took Milcah to be his wife. Milcah, which is the daughter of Aram, the son of Shem. We find other sons of Jacob marrying into Aram as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. It was always preferred by Jacob that his sons would marry into the Semitic line, his relatives. Again, there's no mention of Levi's wives or wife in the 66 books of the King James Version of Bible. So according to the book of Jubilees, Levi's wife is Semitic. Moving on to the fourth son of Jacob, Judah, properly pronounced Yehuda, son of Leah. Judah married Shunah, the daughter of a Canaanite. We can find this in Genesis, the 38th chapter, the 2nd verse. Dan, who's the fifth son of Jacob, son of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid. Dan went into the land of Moab and took for a wife Apaleth, the daughter of Camudane the Moabite, and brought her into the land of Canaan. Book of Jasher, chapter 45. We know the Moabites to be children of Lot. Of course, we know Lot to be the nephew of Abraham. The Moabites, being a neighbor to the west, was constantly in conflict with Yasharel, just like many of the other neighbors around. Yasharel constantly was a thorn in Yasharel's side. So Dan marries a Semitic woman from the tribe of Moab. Again, there's no mention of Dan's wife in the 66 books of the King James Version. And I use 66 books of the King James Version because many people are used to reading that version of the Bible. That Bible is considered the Christian canonized scripture. But again, we know that Jasher was a real book, a book that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that is mentioned in the King James Version as well. Okay, moving on to the next son, Naphtali, son of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid. Naphtali went into Haran and took from thence a daughter of Amram, the son of Uz, the son of Nahor, for wives. Again, there's no mention of Naphtali in the 66 books of the King James Version. And again, using the book of Jasher, chapter 45, as the reference. This being the main chapter in the book of Jasher in describing the wives of the 12 patriarchs. All right, next son up is Gad, the seventh son of Jacob, son of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid. So now we see Leah's handmaid, Zilpah, having a child for Leah. And when you read in the book of Genesis, the 29th and the 30th chapter, you can see what's going on here. There is a backdrop to this, why and how Zilpah and Bilhah, how they got involved, and why are they having children. This is all in those two chapters. You can go in and read those. And it reads here that Gad and Naphtali went into Haran and took from thence the daughters of Amram, the son of Uz, the son of Nahor, for wives. And Gad took Uzith and brought them to the land of Canaan, to their father's house. Now we know that these are kinfolks. They are relatives to the sons of Jacob, Yasharel, Nahor being the brother of Abraham. So it tells us that Naphtali and Gad both married into the Semite women. Okay, there is no mention of Gad's wife in the 66 books of the King James Version or the Christian canonized Bible. Asher, the eighth son of Jacob, son of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid. Regarding the wife of Asher, and Asher went forth and took Adon, the daughter of Aphel, the son of Hadad, the son of Ishmael, for a wife, and brought her into the land of Canaan. Book of Jasher, 45th chapter. There is no mention of Asher having a wife in the 66 books of the King James Version. Issachar, the ninth son of Jacob, son of Leah. According to the book of Jasher, Issachar married Aridah, the younger daughter of Jobab, the son of Joktan. Interestingly enough, two sons of Joktan were called Havilah and Sheba. We know that these are regions of Ethiopia, so just threw a little bit of footnote in there. There is no mention of Issachar having a wife in the 66 books of the Bible, King James Version, or Christian canonized scripture. Zebulun, the 10th son of Jacob, son of Leah. According to the book of Jasher, Zebulun went into Midian and took for a wife Marisha, the daughter of Molad, the son of Abidah, the son of Midian, and brought her into the land of Canaan. There is no mention of Zebulun's wife in the 66 books of the King James Version, Christian canonized scripture. We know Midian to be a son of Keturah. Keturah, we know, was one of Abraham's wives. Keturah, we know also to be Egyptian. Some say she was Ethiopian. But in either way, we know that she was a Hamite because Midian's father is Abraham, so this would have made him a Hebrew. His mother was Ethiopian or Egyptian. More people lean towards Ethiopia, especially in Ethiopia. and his father was Abraham. So again, going all the way back to Abraham, we see marriages between those who are Hamites and Shemites, more specifically patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Yasharel. Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, son of Rachel. In the Bible, Joseph's wife is Asenath, an Egyptian woman from a noble family. She was the mother of Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. This is Genesis chapter 41, verse 45. So here we find Joseph, Joseph, marrying an Egyptian of nobility. The book of Genesis chapter 41 tells us that she was the daughter of Potiphar, a priest of On. Her sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, we know that they became powerful tribes there in Yasharel. So now we know more about who their mother was and who they were. And that's been the goal of this episode, to understand who our patriarchs were, who they were married to, the wives. The more we can understand that, the better we can know who we are. We're wanting to get to know who our patriarchs were. Because if you watch the TV, if you listen to people at your neighborhood church, you're not going to get this. You're not going to get the truth. Who these people were. We need to know who they were so that we can know who we are. Our DNA is their DNA. Okay? Moving on to the last son, and we know him to be Benjamin. Benjamin being the 12th son of Jacob, the son of Rachel. And Jacob sent into Aram, the son of Zobah, and took for his son Benjamin Machiliah, the daughter of Aram. Probably pronouncing that off. And she came to the land of Canaan, to the house of Jacob. Book of Jasher, the 45th chapter. There's no mention of Benjamin's wife in the 66 books of the Bible. Canonized, Christian canonized scripture, King James Version. So we know Aram to be a son of Shem. Again, this would have been a relative of Jacob, a Semite. So we see here that Jacob finds a wife for Benjamin from the family of Aram, which is his relative. So we know that Benjamin's wife was Semitic. We know that the Aramaic language came out of Aram. We find the Aramaic language in the Bible. We see our Messiah speaking Aramaic as well. That comes from Aram and his line of people. That was their language. That was their dialect. That is why you find the Aramaic language very close to the Hebrew language, because we are relatives to Aram. So it is important that we know who the wives were of the 12 patriarchs. And hopefully now you know more than when we started. As I mentioned before, this is not about race. Race is a Western construct. It's a philosophy that came from the Western portion of the world. What we want to do is focus on the 12 tribes. Were they a people of color? That goes without saying, right? If you do a little research, you can find it, right? You can find that these people were dark-skinned colored people. Of course, we had many shades and still do within the 12 tribes. But it's important to know where our patriarchs lived, who lived around them, who did they marry and then have children with. The more you understand that, we can understand our history and get back on board to where the Most High wants us. All praises to the Most High. As always, Miss Patriarch, it's always a pleasure to be with you. Also, those questions that I have not answered in the comments, I do see those. I plan on getting to those. Know that your Aki has been more busy than normal as of late, but I do plan on getting to those questions. So please bear with me on that. Salak for not answering back sooner. But I want you to know that I am not ignoring the comments. And as always, family, have a great time in the Most High. Till next time, shalom, shalom. If you got something out of this channel, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment in the comment section below. It helps to grow the channel. Thank you, and may the Most High bless you.